Welcome to the Topper Shotgun Collectors Project. Today we're going to do First Gun, Introduction to the Topper Shotgun and Firearms Safety. Many of the viewers of this channel are experienced and responsible shooters who sometimes have the opportunity and privilege to train new shooters on using Topper shotguns. You should feel free to use this video as an adjunct to that training. Students, welcome to the Topper Shotgun community. I assume since you're watching this video, you have found an experienced and responsible person to help you on your journey to becoming a safe shooter. And I applaud you on your choice of an H&R Topper or similar Topper-style gun for use with your initial training. The Topper makes an excellent training shotgun. This video is just going to get you started on the basics, okay? So we're going to talk about the Topper shotgun, the parts and features of a Topper shotgun, basic safety rules, operation and function of the Topper shotgun, and ammunition for your shotgun. And before you go to the range, we're going to talk about range safety, range commands, sight picture, trigger control, load, fire, eject, and cleanup. All right, let's get started. What is a shotgun? Well, a shotgun is a long gun that has a shoulder stock and a smooth bore and shoots multiple projectiles in a single shot. The Topper is a top break, single barrel, single shot shotgun. It has an external hammer and a single action trigger. It is lightweight, durable, reliable, and safe to operate. It is a utilitarian gun, meaning that it is inexpensive but gets the job done. Over the years, various manufacturers have produced exact copies of the Topper shotgun. We call those Topper-style shotguns. Those would include guns like the New England Firearms Partner, the Savage 301, and the Norinco ML1. These instructions will apply to all of those models. Okay, let's look at the parts, not in any particular order here. This is the frame or receiver. It's kind of the main part of the gun, and it holds the functional parts, which are sometimes just called the action. This is the barrel out here. This portion of the barrel is called the chamber. That's where the shell will go in for you to fire. This is called the hammer. This is the part you pull back to cock the gun. This is the trigger, the part that you pull back so you can fire the gun. This is the trigger guard that protects the trigger from being accidentally pushed. And this is called the side release lever, and that's what opens the action of the gun here. All right, this is the end of the barrel, and you see this hole here. They call that the muzzle. That's where the shot or the slug will come out of. And this little thing on top here, that's your bead sight, your front sight. That's what you'll be aiming at the target with. And this is called the forend or forearm or forestock. On Toppers, they either come out by removing this screw here, or some of them in the older models snap off just by pulling down firmly on them. This is called the buttstock or the rear portion of the gun. It's where you hold this portion against your shoulder when you fire it. And it has a pistol grip here to let you hold it a little bit more firm. And it also has what's called a butt plate here. And sometimes that has a cushioned rubber portion. They call that a recoil pad. And that helps absorb the recoil or kick, especially on the larger bore shotguns. Another important part of the shotgun is the instruction manual. If you can get hold of the original manual that came with your firearm, it's best to review that before you take it out to the range. Now that you know the parts of the gun, the safety rules will be a little bit easier to understand. And we want to cover the basic safety rules before we even start handling the firearms. There's a multitude of safety rules related to all the different disciplines of firearms use. For example, if you're skeet shooting, there's rules. If you're on a particular range, there's rules. If you're hunting, there's rules. So what we're going to cover here, though, is just the very basic rules of safe firearms handling that apply to every situation. Number 1, always keep the muzzle pointed in a safe direction. Number 2, always keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to shoot. Number 3, treat every gun as if it was loaded. Number 4, keep guns unloaded until ready to use. Your mentor, that's the person that probably is showing you this video and helping you learn firearm safety, will introduce you to more rules and explain these rules in more detail. Listen carefully to what they tell you and follow their instructions. Feel free to take a short break at this point and discuss those rules with your instructor. Welcome back to part 2. We're going to start off talking about what do you shoot out of a shotgun. We shoot shot shells out of a shotgun. And what a shot shell does is it puts out several small projectiles down the smooth bore of the shotgun. And those projectiles spread apart as they go down range with the intent of making it a little easier to hit your target. This is a cross-section of a shotgun shell to show you how it works. The first thing that happens is the firing pin hits that little primer there on the left. That puts sparks into the gunpowder. The gunpowder begins to expand rapidly, or explode, if you will, and it pushes that wad forward, and that wad pushes all those little pellets out down the barrel, and out they come out the muzzle, and they start to spread out to go down and hit the target. And this is what you'd see on the target end. This is called number 6 shot. It's a pretty fine shot used for rabbits and squirrels and birds and such. And this is 15 yards down range, and you see that spread pretty much all over the target. That big hole in the upper left that you see, that's probably the wad that went down range and hit the target as well. Now, the shot comes in different sizes for various applications. If you're shooting something bigger, like javelina or small hogs or fox, you might use something more this size. This is number 3 buck. Each pellet, there's 20 pellets in it, and each pellet is about 0.25 inches, a little bit bigger than a .22 bullet. And although I told you before that shotguns shoot multiple projectiles, there is an exception. Sometimes they shoot what's called a slug, which is a solid projectile the same size as the gauge of the shotgun. If you notice on the shell to the right, that big, heavy projectile in there has grooves along the side, and that helps it spin as it comes out of the smooth barrel and makes it spin a little bit more like a rifle bullet, gives it a little more stability. And you see on the target end, those 3 large holes, each of those is caused by a single slug going through. That's 3 separate shots. And that 4th hole down there is the wad, again, going through the target. Well, shotgun shells come in different sizes, from really big to kind of tiny, but all of them can shoot birdshot, buckshot, and slugs. That's why shotguns are so versatile. So any gauge shotgun, given the correct ammunition, can take all kinds of game, from little birds onto big game like average-sized deer and hogs. Of course, good hunting skills are required. This is part of what makes shotguns so popular with homesteaders and survivalists and people on a budget and anybody who wants to survive with just one gun. We'll look at 3 of the more common size of shotgun shells. From left to right, we have the 12 gauge, the 20 gauge, and the 410. They come in different lengths as well, anywhere from 1.5 to 3.5 inches. So you need to know the correct gauge and length of the shells that your gun is designed for. This information on a topper is usually found on the top of the barrel near the chamber. So this topper could take only 12 gauge shells, 3 inches or less in length. On this example, it says 410 gauge. It does not give a chamber length, and that's where having the owner's manual would come in handy. Once you've determined your gauge and chamber length, you can go select ammunition that's correct for your shotgun. And they're marked clearly on the boxes. And the gauge is typically marked on the bottom of the shell near the primer. And the length is usually marked on the side of the shell on the hull. You may have noticed that sometimes the 410 is referred to as bore and not gauge. And that's because of all the shotgun shells, the 410 is the only one that's actually measured in inches. A 410 is 0.410 inches in bore diameter. All the other shotgun shells are measured in gauge, and that's an old, antiquated way to measure diameter. You should look it up. It's really interesting to see how they calculated gauge. All right, we're going to enter part 3, operating the topper shotgun. If you want to take a break now and ask any questions of your mentor or instructor about ammunition or anything else, be a good time to do that. All right, so we've gone over the topper shotgun, gone over the parts of the topper shotgun, the ammunition for the topper shotgun, and the safety rules. Now we're going to get into actually handling the topper, but don't touch your topper shotgun until your instructor tells you so. We're going to demonstrate the operation of the shotgun to you here, and we're going to do it in the studio. Now, generally, most of you are going to be handling your shotgun only on the range. We generally don't handle the shotgun in the home or in the classroom. But in this case, we have some specific equipment. We have a studio where no live ammo is allowed. Live ammo is locked elsewhere. We have snap caps, which are practice training ammo, which does not have primer or powder or anything that can discharge. And we also have what's called a safe wall. A safe wall is not designed to take rounds, but it's a wall that is safe to take rounds. It would stop a round would there be an accidental discharge, and there's no one behind that wall or in danger should an accidental discharge occur. Now, you may or may not have that in your home or classroom. If you don't have it in your home or classroom, you'll be doing this practice on the range. Now, since we're simulating that we're at the range, I'm going to show you the things that you're going to need for the range. First thing is a good pair of safety glasses, shooting glasses that have high impact protection. The next is good hearing protection. At a minimum, little earplugs that go in your ears, but ideally ear muffs. This is great for training. These are electronic ear muffs. You can turn them on. They have a little amplifier in them. And when you put them on, you can still hear normal conversation and ambient sounds, but what you won't hear is the loud blast of the shotgun. And I highly recommend these. They're anywhere from $30, $60 and up, but they're really worth the investment, particularly when you're training, so you can hear the instructor or the mentor, the range officer, the other shooters. Makes it a lot safer to shoot with, and I highly recommend them. Okay, so again, don't touch your firearm until your instructor tells you to. But what we're going to demonstrate here is the handling of the firearm. And we have to remember those basic safety rules as we do this. We're going to keep the gun pointed in a safe direction. We're going to keep our finger off the trigger until we're ready to shoot. We're going to assume that gun is loaded, and we're only going to load it when we're actually going to fire it. Okay, when we do this demonstration, we're going to be talking as if everybody's right-handed. If you're left-handed, you know the drill. Just switch when I say right hand over to left hand, vice versa. I'm sure you've been through that before. So the first thing when you secure your gun, the first thing we're going to have to do is make sure that it's unloaded. So we're going to take our right hand, put it on the pistol grip with our fingers away from the trigger. We're going to keep the gun pointed in a safe direction. We're going to put our left hand on the fore end. And then we're going to push this side release lever here with our thumb. And then we're going to open the action of the gun. Once the action's opened, we can look inside, put our finger inside the chamber, and make sure that there's no round in that chamber. We can also look down the barrel and make sure there are no obstructions or excess grease or oil in the barrel. And you should practice a little bit of closing and opening the action till you get comfortable with that. Remember to keep the gun pointed in a safe direction and keep your finger off the trigger. Not inside the trigger guard or on the trigger guard. You want it away from the trigger guard and off the trigger. Just practice that a few times. Now, some of these guns, if they're older, like most of the toppers are, if you just press the side release lever, the barrel will fall open on its own. Some of the newer guns, or one that hasn't been used much, you might have to press the side release lever and give it a little tug to open it up. All right, once you're used to opening the action, we're going to open the action, check down the barrel. It's clear. We're going to take our round In this case, we're going to use a snap cap, but on the range, you would check to make sure that you had the right gauge and the right length and the right shot in the shell that you're going to use on the range. You have the right ammunition. Then you just insert that into the chamber all the way and close the action. The action should close fairly easily if you have the right round in there. Well, now the gun is loaded and it's in the ready to use position. We don't store a gun in that condition. We don't transport a gun in that condition. We don't climb into a tree stand or out of a tree stand with a loaded gun in the ready position. So we have to be very careful. It's actually loaded now. It's not ready to fire. It's not cocked, but it's ready to use. All right, to get it in the ready to fire position, we're going to have to cock it. So these are the steps that we're going to do that. We're going to look down range and look toward our target. We're going to point the gun generally toward the target and pull it with the forearm and the pistol grip back firmly into our shoulder. That's to prevent the discomfort of recoil pounding back on us. The firmer you can put it into your shoulder, the less recoil kick you're going to get. Once you've got that in position and it's pointed down towards your target, you can cock the hammer. Now, keeping your finger off the trigger, pull the hammer all the way back till you hear it click. Now it's cocked. As soon as you touch the trigger, the gun will go off. Now you're going to line your sights up. And when you've got your sights lined up, you're going to put your finger on the trigger, pull the trigger, and the gun will fire. You follow through, then you're ready to eject the spent shell. Just press the side release lever with your thumb, open the action, and the shell will eject. Well, let's take a look now at sight alignment. How are you going to get your shotgun lined up to the target and hit the center of the target? One thing that is rather unique to the Topper shotgun is that you can't see the sights when the gun is uncocked. So when you pull the gun up to your shoulder and look down range, you point the gun in the general direction of the target, and then you have to cock the hammer back, and then you'll be able to see the sights. For the rear sight, you just use the top dead center of the round portion of the back of the frame, about where this red dot is. The front sight is that golden bead you see here. And what you're going to do is you're going to line up that back sight, the top dead center of the back of the frame, with that bead and the target. When you get all three of those in line, that's your sight alignment, that's your sight picture, and that's when you can pull the trigger. And what you're doing is you're focusing on that bead, not the target, not the back of the frame, but the bead. Everything else would be a little bit blurry. All right, once you get your sights aligned, you're going to pull the trigger. So I guess we have to talk about trigger control. The triggers on the Toppers are pretty nice. Because it's a single action shotgun, it doesn't have a lot of slack or take up or anything to do as you pull it back. You'll find that when you put your finger on the trigger, it feels firm, and all you have to do is apply increasing gentle pressure until you feel it give, and it'll let the hammer forward. You might use the tip of your finger or the flat of your finger to pull that trigger back. Most people on a shotgun like the Topper are going to use the flat of their finger. They're going to find that's easiest. You don't need to reach way into the trigger guard with your finger, just inside the flat of the first part of your finger there. And you try to keep that pull straight back. And like I said before, it's just gentle pressure on that trigger, pulling straight back until it gives. And Toppers are known to have pretty heavy trigger pulls, so the first few times you pull it, it might seem like you're pulling really hard to get that thing to give, but you'll get used to that. That's the way Toppers are. Okay, let's go to part 4, the range. If you're familiar with your gun, familiar with the operation, familiar with the terminology of the gun, and familiar with the safety rules, you should be about ready to go to the range. So a range is just a safe place to shoot. There are indoor ranges, outdoor ranges. Some are on private land, some are on public land. But be sure that anywhere that you shoot, that it's legal to shoot there, you have permission to shoot there, and that your firearm is appropriate for the type of range that you're shooting on. The range that you use to shoot might be a formal one like in this picture, or it might just be out on somebody's property. But in either case, it needs a good backstop, and that's something that's going to stop the projectiles after they've gone to the target at the terminal end of the range. The one pictured here is a giant dirt berm. It's probably about 25 feet tall and 20 feet thick. But if you're shooting out on your own land or somebody's property, it might just be a big old pile of dirt or a pile of old tree trunks. Just be sure it'll be adequate to stop the projectiles that are going down range, and wide and tall enough to catch any missed shots that might go off target. The firing line is a line, often imaginary, that's in front of the shooters. In this case, it would be the edge of that black bench. We want to keep people behind that firing line when we're shooting, and we use a few words to do that. Hot means it's permissible to fire downrange, and no one should be downrange when the range is hot. Everyone near the firing line should be wearing ear and eye protection when the range is hot. Cold means firing has ceased, and all firearms are on a firm surface, empty, with their actions open. All shooters and a range officer, if present, must confirm that the range is cold before anyone moves downrange. When a range is active or hot and an unsafe situation arises, such as someone is seen downrange or another unsafe condition is discovered, the person or persons discovering that unsafe condition should announce ceasefire loudly and repetitively until all fires stop shooting. Rules vary slightly from range to range, but in general, when you hear ceasefire, you should immediately stop firing, place the firearm on a firm surface, and step away from the firearm. Then follow the instructions of the range officer. He may or may not have you clear and unload your firearm. Be sure to confirm the rules of a ceasefire at the range that you're shooting on. And that includes if you're just informally shooting on somebody's property with a few friends, make sure everybody understands what's expected of us if a ceasefire is called. All right, when transporting your gun to the range, it should be unloaded, securely encased, and any ammo should be stored separately. And it should stay that way right up to the point that you set up on the bench where you're going to shoot from. When you unpack your gun at the range, make sure the first thing you do is open the action, make sure it's empty, keep it pointed downrange, and don't clutter your bench. The only thing on your bench should be your gun and your ammo in most cases. Okay, we're ready to shoot. We're going to make sure the range is ready. The range is declared hot. Now we're going to make sure we got the right gun, the barrel's clear, got the right ammunition, right gauge and length. We insert that, close the breech, line the gun up with the target, keeping our finger off the trigger. We pull the hammer back, get our sight picture, pull the trigger, and eject the empty casing. So now our action's open, chamber's empty. We declare the range cold. Everybody's clear, we can walk down range. Check out our target, see how we did. Looks like birdshot there, doesn't it? And even though the gun's empty, we stay out of the way of the barrel on our way back. Now we declare the range hot again, look around, go through the same procedure, start all over. And when we're finished for the day, we declare the range cold, pack up our firearms and equipment, pick up all our empties and wads and dispose of them properly. If there's a target shack, make sure you disassemble all the cardboard and target stands and put them back where they belong. If you're shooting out in the woods and you're shooting bottles and cans and such, paper targets, make sure you pick them all up. I hate to go to BLM land and see where people have just made a mess of the designated shooting areas. I'd like to thank the mentors and the students who have taken time to take this program. I hope it was helpful. I've added a little extra video on the back here about how to safely decock your topper. It was a previous short that we made. And I also hope that you'll find other training programs in your area to use, like hunter safety and NRA programs and other agency programs. There's a lot more education to have. And first aid, stop the bleed, those are kind of good programs to have too if you're going to shoot. Well, good luck, and I'll leave you with this, how to decock your topper. How to safely decock a topper. The topper shotgun is a single action shotgun, meaning the trigger performs one function, that is to move the hammer forward. Once you have loaded and made ready your shotgun, and then cocked it to make it ready to fire, there are only two reasons you would want the hammer to go forward. The first, of course, is to fire it. The other reason would be once you've cocked and aimed your firearm, whatever you were aiming at moved out of sight. So now you would need to safely decock your firearm. First, point the firearm in a safe direction, keep your finger off the trigger, and pull it firmly into your shoulder. Next, place your thumb firmly on top of the hammer, pull it back slightly. Reach in, touch the trigger. As you gently move the hammer forward, get your finger off the trigger as you gently move the hammer fully forward. Then you can unload the firearm. Getting your finger off the trigger is extremely important. It allows the internal safeties to prevent the hammer from striking the transfer bar or the firing pin. Here's the wrong way, letting the hammer down and keeping your finger on the trigger. If your thumb slips off the hammer, the gun will discharge. Here's the correct way again in slow motion. Thumb on the hammer, touch the trigger, gently move the hammer forward, get your finger off the trigger, gently coax the hammer all the way down. If you do that, your thumb slips, the gun should not discharge. Practice using a snap cap and not live ammo. Keep the gun pointed in a safe direction and repeat the procedure over and over until you feel very comfortable with it. Remember to get your finger off that trigger as you gently move the hammer forward. Safe decocking is a skill that every responsible topper owner needs to perfect. It's your responsibility. Thank you for visiting the H&R Topper Shotgun Collectors Project. We hope you'll look at our other videos. Safe shooting.